FORA.tv. The world is thinking.
This is something I blog about quite a lot. This is a diagram I put together about 3 years ago, I guess now. And it's based on Chris Anderson's long tail. It's kind of based on the sort of business marketing premise that you have a small number of users who are willing to pay a large amount of money for a device, say an iPhone. You know, not everyone's going to be able to afford one. It's a fairly exclusive market, but you can make a lot of money selling just a few because they're quite expensive. But there's a lot more people who are willing to pay a lot less, and if you add up the total value of that, then you actually create something which is equally, if not more valuable than the high-end stuff. And I think a lot of NGOs that I've worked with and concentrate on along this long tail, they're kind of off the radar, generally speaking, of a lot of technologies, but they provide hugely valuable work. At this top end, and I'd like to just say at this point, there's nothing wrong or right about any of these approaches. They're all very much needed. But for my particular focus on the small guy, I think there's some fairly big problems. At the top end here, we have stuff which is, I mean, generally speaking, expensive, technical. It's infrastructure heavy. You need servers, you need web connectivity, that kind of stuff. You need training, and there's a certain amount of lead time before you can start to use it. And they're generally for profit, generally speaking. And then down here, you have this sort of long tail, more appropriate solution in my mind. It's cheap or free, it's easy to implement, it's infrastructure light, so it'll run on stuff they've already got, it's quick to adopt and learn, and it's generally non-profit driven. And so you can see it's kind of two ends of the scale. The problem is, though, that I've seen a lot of focus up here. And if you think right now about what's happening in, say, mHealth, there's a lot of money being thrown into mHealth. There's a lot of very, very good solutions coming out, but many are kind of, again, focusing at the top end. I think a lot of organizations trying to find solutions for this are seeing like governments and major government departments as being their client, and I see the client as a healthcare worker scrambling around on the ground in a rural area. It's a different way of thinking about how you're focusing. I think we need to be looking at stuff down here. That's my argument here. So how do you get stuff that works down there? Well, first of all, it has to run on readily available hardware. You don't want NGOs to have to go shopping to buy stuff to make this work. It needs to be quick to put together and quick to basically get running. Again, they don't have access to technical support necessarily. I'm not going to start answering calls at 3 a.m. in the morning, and this has to really basically work out of the box. It needs to be cheap or ideally free. If solutions are going to be charged for, say an NGO in Niger want to use something, how do you charge an NGO in Niger to take a piece of software off you? I doubt if many have got credit cards or PayPal accounts. And then how do you replicate this stuff? How does one NGO using it then share that knowledge with other NGOs in similar areas, either by topic or by geography, and then start to spread the use of the tool? And finally, how do you build sort of communities and networks around the use of the tool? How do you get people to, as I say, communicate and actually help each other out? So bearing in mind those sort of criteria, there's a few more, and I've blogged about this quite a bit, but this is just kind of a summary of that because I've only got 10 minutes. But looking at those sort of criteria that we have to meet, I developed some software called FrontlineSMS about 4 years ago now. It's actually quite an old piece of software, but it's only recently started to get some real traction. And basically what it does, turns a laptop computer, generally a laptop computer, it can be a netbook, it can even be an OLPC. There are people out there now who have this running on OLPCs, which is kind of interesting whether or not you like the OLPC. But you plug a phone that you get from a local market, generally low-end phones, and a cable, or use a modem if you've got a little bit of money, or get a data card, and it creates a two-way group messaging hub. So you can be out in the middle of nowhere with a laptop and a phone and a cable. You don't need the internet, you don't need any big equipment, and this thing will work. You could be driving around in your car, and as long as there's a mobile signal where you are, this thing will allow you to communicate messages. So that's you to send things like, health information, job alerts, prices to farmers, or get stuff back from people. Maybe you're a radio station, you're talking about stuff on air, you want people to be able to text you back. The actual background of the software is actually conservation and not human rights. The activist community are generally the first to jump onto any new technology. But the actual background of the software was here when I was working in Kruger National Parks in 2003. Yeah. So I think that the key is, how do you build stuff which allows NGOs to implant their own kind of DNA and their own thinking on the tool? Don't try and solve a problem you don't understand, and I simply can't solve all the problems out there. A few uses of the software, election monitoring, Nigeria 2007, it was used to monitor the Nigerian presidential elections, and the BBC picked up on that. In Zimbabwe, Kubatana are actually here. I don't know if Amanda's around or whether she's gone, but they've been using FrontlineSMS since the very first week to get information from communities and send information out on human rights abuses and various things happening in Zimbabwe. Pakistan, during the state of emergency a year and a half or so ago, it was used by bloggers to get information out of the country when they were too afraid to go on the internet, and there were worries about being dobbed in by ISPs. Afghanistan, it's sending security alerts to field workers, keeping them safe. NGOs running around trying to rebuild the country, risking their lives. Simple SMS can keep them safe, as it is doing. In the Philippines, overseas workers who are out on their own working in the hotel industry and so on, if they get attacked, they get raped, they get their passport stolen, something bad happens, there's an SOS alert line they can use anytime they like, and FrontlineSMS is driving that, and that gives them that security that they're always in touch. And Paco, who's around, I hope, somewhere, but his film, The Reckoning, they're looking to use FrontlineSMS around the world to allow viewers to start texting and engaging with the viewing, and that's film's being shown tonight.